Oh no, you're on mute, Jen.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
We'll just use this for now. All right, hello, welcome everyone to TCL-47. This is sync number 1, 2. I don't know how we're numbering. 2. Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, it depends on if we are zero indexing or not. All right. So regardless, welcome everyone. So I think Yolanda, do you want to start off with that great question that we had just now?
Yes, actually, Tina, can you say the question? We're recording now, so and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I just was asking for, so Viet had shared links to the hosted site or the hosted, yeah, I guess we'll just say the hosted site. And I wanted to know, like, how would I have set that up myself? So that was all.
Yeah, that is a great question. And let me share my screen and can I get screen sharing access, Yolanda? We good? Okay.
I thought you got it now?
I have it now. Thank you. All right. And let me know if you cannot see my screen. Otherwise, I'll keep going. All right. So this is your repo. And I just looked under your pull requests. There will be no active pull requests, so you'll need to look at the closed pull request because you've all merged your changes in. And I'll take a look at Tina and Mariah's work here. So it's actually in your pull request here. If you scroll down, you'll see this box here. We have an action that runs automatically to. It's essentially you can refer to it as your deploy preview. And this is the link that I copied and put into the channel for you. So if you click on this link, you should go to the, so basically this is the work that you did hosted through Netlify. And that's how you find it.
Awesome, thanks.
Still can't hear you, Jen. I think you're, yeah. Just a little bit a reminder on that link. It does expire. So just FYI, it's not permanent. I think it's like a week or something. So just keep that in mind, and that's all. All right, back to you, Jen.
All right, perfect. Yeah, and I guess that leads really well right into demos. So really excited to see y'all demo the first issues that you've tackled as pairs. We had some great questions in the chat that I had missed from yesterday, I think, and I think Yolanda answered them, but I wanted to answer them again during our sync. For now, until we figure out where the actual production build of the repo is, feel free to just demo from your branch. I think one of the reasons that I had originally written that and kind of my experience as a Collabby before was that we were really encouraged to try to demo from the actual app as it was on main. So that way we can kind of see the overall state of how our app was kind of chugging along. So, but no pressure there, especially in the first few weeks. There will be very limited capabilities anyways, so it's not that big of a deal. We'd just love to see all your work and stuff that you've done together. So does any group want to go first? Sweet. All right, take the floor.
All right. So I'm going to start and do the first part, and then Mariah is going to take over from there. All right. Can you see my screen sharing issue number 1? Awesome. Okay. So our issue is, or was, as a user, I want to read the names of all the items in my shopping list. And so if we look over on the list page, we can now see these items from the sample lists that are rendered on the page. Okay, so that's what the user sees right now. Great. But what are these items? Where do they come from? How do they get there? So going back into the issue, we have our acceptance criteria. the stream list items function is used in app.jsx to get the items in the current list from the Firestore database. And then the list is passed into the list component as a prop name data. So this data is, we want to make sure that that's functioning as it should, or that we're getting it as it should, and that's what we're rendering. And so now if we pop into our app.jsx, we can see that the variable data is here, and it's initially set to an empty array. And currently there's a demo or a default token set up so that we can see these test list items. Obviously in the future, that's going to be controlled differently based on the user and their token. But for the purposes of just setting this up initially, we're using the test list and the token with that. And so, so given that there is when this use effect kicks in, given that there is a token, it will then activate this stream list items with the list token and then snapshot. So snapshot, as I understand, is a special term related to Firebase. I haven't used Firebase before, so a lot of the Firebase terminology and lexicon is new to me, and how all the methods work and things. But as I understand, this is like a snapshot. It is the term that's used for getting that information from the Firebase database. And so we get that snapshot, and then get item data is over here in the Firebase .js file. And so, so with that snapshot, then this mapping method puts it into a format that it can then be returned back into the use effect as an array that we can then set that data that is up here. So now it's no longer an empty array, it's a list of items from that snapshot, and that data is passed here into the list. And so from there, I will pass it over to Mariah to pick it up from the list.
Yeah, all right, thank you, Tina. So let me just grab a screen real quick. I'm used to working on 2 monitors. I'm just on my laptop today, so bear with me here. Yeah, so when Tina and I met, like she said, we went ahead and read over what we were wanting, what we were wanting to do here, which is just display a list of items on our page. And to do that, we figured that using the map method was going to be the best way to do that. And what map does is it basically just creates an array by calling a specific function on each element present in the parent array. It's a non-mutating method, and it's typically used to iterate over an array, calling a function on every element of the array. Now, this was a topic of discussion in the comments, the spread operator, the spread syntax here, which I hadn't thought too much about because that's how I was taught to do things with mapping. So I did a little bit more research about where and why it's necessary, or when it can be used. And it basically all this does is it creates a shallow copy of the existing values and updates the object and array immutably. So it's just essentially copying the contents into a new object and replacing it with a new value, which is why we are able to see the list of items instead of just one of them, because it is calling into each object and writing it over. And that's essentially all that we had to do to get our list to render onto the page.
Awesome. That's really great. I really liked how you both demoed, kind of explaining kind of the why. I think a lot of, and the how. I think a lot of demos sometimes will go into like, this is what this line of code does. And I think this is a great example of what a good demo looks like between 2 people. My only question, I guess, I didn't review your code this week, but what would happen if there are no list items to display? So if the array was just empty, what would your code display?
I'm not really sure without actually like testing that.
Yeah,
all right.
my first thought is it would just be an empty page.
Mm-hmm.
For That's my first thought. Until you add something to the list, it's going to be empty.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. So probably like the unordered list would render as the parent element, and then there'd just be no list items inside. Yeah, so I think probably one thing to think about maybe would be to think about the different cases of like, oh, if the list was empty, or if the lift doesn't exist, then you might get mirror thrown. But yeah, otherwise, I really liked it. All the commenting and the code and everything is laid out really, really well. Does anyone else have any like compliments or anything like that they want to talk about for this demo?
I do want to, I have used the spread operator quite a bit. I was actually very surprised that I was like, is this going to work? I was like, why, how is this working? And can you maybe explain like why it's working the way it does instead of having to use a different syntax?
Yeah, so the way I understand it, and this is a very limited understanding, is that it looks at our data and the objects that we have in that array, and it goes ahead and makes a copy and then replaces with the updated information, essentially. And I could be incorrect, but that's kind of how I understand it. So there could be multiple things if there were more than just the name. So like you have the name of the item that you're adding, like it could be quantity, the price. You could have all of that in your spread operator. And instead of having to do item.name, item.quantity, item.price, doing the ... is just going to grab all of that.
That was a great explanation. Thank you.
Oh yeah, and then about the spread operator, I really like using it too. But just to know, it depends on the team. So some teams like seeing explicit prop passing, and some teams love the spread operator. So don't be surprised whenever you get to your next job, your team is very opinionated one way or the other. But yeah. All right. Thank you.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
First of all, awesome job of demoing that. I thought you struck a really good balance of providing enough context while staying high level enough. Just a quick question. I thought it was really helpful to hear you talk about, well, you being the mentors our first week, about staying within the scope and not trying to add additional functionality. And in this case, you're talking about what do we see if there are no list items, and if, you know, as we move ahead and we're trying to stick to scope, if something occurs to us that like, you know, this could be a good functionality or a good thing to conditionally render or something like that, where's a good repository for us to keep notes about, like collectively as a team, like things that we might want to address later on down the road?
That's a really great question. I think there's a couple of different places that you could probably put it. You'll probably create some sort of file on GitHub and commit that file. But if you don't really want that overhead, one thing that you could do is just kind of like have a suggestions thread in Slack and just start throwing the suggestions in there. Just because later on in Collab, like in the duration that you're going to be doing Collab Lab, towards the end, you'll have a lot more time because the last few issues are just kind of like restyling and things like that. And so you'll have a lot more freedom to actually add more features if you do have time. So just so that you know that there is some time built in if you choose to take it towards the end, to take it a little bit extra once we have the actual like base functionality in.
Awesome, thanks.
Sorry, go ahead, Weston.
Oh, I just said awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I know that what Jen was mentioning at the end of, you know, as we like approach the end of the project, you'll have more time to do this. I'm wondering if it's a good idea to even like ticket things out now for later, you know, so maybe that's something that we can have a discussion about via Slack, depending on how much time we have today, but actually writing tickets in GitHub for you all to do later.
Just from my experience, I know a Collabby and I, one of my partners, like, "Ooh, wouldn't it be cool if we added this, you know, to one of the the stories that was assigned to us. So every group does it differently. So for my group, the mentor suggested, oh, create a separate branch, work on it, and then maybe you could add that branch later on towards the end. So because he wanted to add like a calendar feature here and there to it. And then the mentors reminded us that, hey, you never know, that might be something later down the line as one of the tasks that might be given to us. So just be careful, don't overdo it and stick to the scope. So Weston, to answer your question, like if it's something like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? Kind of like what Jen said, you could wait till the later, or if you feel comfortable, just creating a whole separate branch, and play around with it, because that's not going to be pushed into main. And then like Viet said, like we could all have a discussion like, oh yeah, well, maybe that might be good to add now or later on, or X, Y, and Z. So this is very fluid. So just like the sky's the limit. So if you have any questions, just ask away in Slack. It's like, hey, I saw this, or what happens if the database had this, or we get this many people, and it wouldn't hurt to have that discussion, and we could definitely tackle from then on.
Sweet. Hope that answers your question, Weston. So thank you, team 1. Team 2, are you ready on deck?
Yes, I'll be sharing my screen, so just a second. All right, can you all see it? Okay, cool. So for issue 2, as a user, I want to be able to navigate to all the pages in the application by clicking the links in the nav bar. The acceptance criteria is the nav element is added to the layout component, links to the home list, and add item pages of the app are in the nav element, and then the links all function as expected using the nav link component from React Router DOM. And let's see. This is the feature added working. And let's see our code. Okay. Here is our code. Weston, did you want to go over it, or would you like for me to go through it?
You're welcome to go through it if you'd like, since you have the screen sharing.
Okay, so first we
I think you need to, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I think you need to toggle, we're only seeing the GitHubs still.
Oh, okay, let's see. Okay, can you see it now? Okay, cool. Oh, wrong VS Code. Okay, so first we imported nav links from React Router DOM, and we use nav link here for the path. Let's see, we use 2 equals and then the / along with, I guess, the page route. And yes, we opted to use navlink instead of the A tag, just because to my understanding, whenever using navlink instead of the A tag, it helps with performance, because with the A tag, it would render the entire page. With navlink, it would just render like the new components that are on the page that you're navigating to within the React application. So that was the reason why we decided to go with navlink instead of the A tag.
And our code for this week was pretty simple, so I don't know if there's a lot else to speak to there. So I was going to speak a little bit to our process, and I just really appreciated that Arniqua did a great job of explaining that last bit to me, that we use the navlink component to prevent that re-render. And it was also really nice, just because this is our first week, to take a little bit of time at the beginning of our meeting to figure out how to best work together remotely. So we spent some time playing with the live share extension. Thank you again, mentors, for sharing that with us. And yeah, working on like experimenting with that a little bit to see how we could take turns typing and speaking to something, so that we were each having a chance to do a little bit of the coding and a little bit of the over the shoulder directing, so to speak. So that was a really great learning experience, and something we're looking forward to exploring more. I think I'd mentioned this in the chat, but one thing that we didn't quite get to work out was sharing the live server. So one of us was running the code live on our machine, but the other person wasn't able to see that. So yeah, that was a really great opportunity to explore a process, and really appreciated how we were able to do that together.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I really appreciate kind of that general feedback of like what went well in the whole process. Also, Arnika, thank you so much for kind of like showing code and really explaining that is one of the biggest gotchas of single page applications for like not even people who are new. Sometimes I forget. I put in an A tag and I was like, where did my state go? That's because you just refreshed the whole React element tree. Anyways, yeah, no, really great job, you guys. I really appreciate it. Sometimes earlier on, like these issues, like the issues, like you mentioned, there's a little bit like less things you have to do, but it's more about the process. And I think focusing on that really kind of helps illustrate. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and just to kind of also comment on that, it is about how you work together as pairs and as an overall team. That's like really what's most important. And you know, you two had a smaller issue, but I think it sounded like you just having worked with live share, and it's kind of like talking for Nico to explain like why the nav link tag versus an A tag to you, Weston, I think is really valuable for both of you, because it's just like the idea of having a better understanding if you can also explain it to somebody else, you know. So yeah, great job, guys.
Yeah, you guys did awesome. Both team, I really enjoy how you show the acceptance criteria. You didn't just jump in and show the code. You didn't just jumped in and show the demo. So it was really nice because as the task gets a little bit more not difficult, but a little bit more busy, it's really nice to see that acceptance criteria and kind of go back and forth, like, these are some of the points that was, given to us, and this is how we tackled it, or this is what we added or what we did. So kudos to both teams for, showing that, and both teams did a fantastic job of demoing today. So good job, everyone. Yay.
All right. If there are no other kind of questions or anything about demos, demos are probably my most favorite part of Collab Lab. So great job, everyone. So if no one else has any more questions, I'll probably hop into the code review learning module for you all. How's that sound? I also was thinking about giving let's see, how are we doing on time? A really impromptu kind of, preview of how to use Git rebase, because I feel like merging and rebasing and things are some things that you all might run into in the future. We'll see how time goes. I thought that this was kind of timely with code reviews, because also Git rebase is a good tool for you to use to kind of reorganize your history to make it easier for reviewers to review your code. That is a somewhat controversial way of doing things, So well, let's see where this takes us. All right, can you all see my screen? I'm gonna be popping back and forth between some tabs, so I won't be putting this in slideshow mode, if y'all don't mind. All right, so code reviews. And has anyone done a code review or been a part of a code review outside of Collab Lab? Other than the mentors, other than the mentors. Let me see. I think I don't see all of you. I just want to make sure I can see all of you. Yeah. All right. So like at the end, I think it'd be really great if we could all kind of like share our different experiences with like code reviews, kind of what has worked, what doesn't really work for you. So basically in this session, we'll just go over what's a code review. I think we all know what that is, but just a quick refresher. The code review cycle, and then what makes a code review a great code review, and then how can I help others review my code, how can I review others' code, and exploring code in GitHub. So what is a code review? So this is kind of a lot of the conversation that we had last week about, hey, when we talk about PR, like where should this conversation go? Where should these talk, like all the things that we're talking about, where should this go? So I think one of the biggest things is we have to remember that code reviews, not only is it for you to get your code like looked at, edited, and stuff like that. One, you can think of it as a conversation between you and another person about your code. And then two, a lot of the times, especially at larger companies, when people really, people are owning their own projects, you need to be able to share a lot of like the context and things like that, kind of what we were talking about in demos, but actually just straight in your PR. Just because a lot of the time when you're interfacing with other people, the PR is like the only place where they'll see incremental changes to the feature that you're working on. So it's all about collaboration. So it's like name, Collab Lab, collaboration. That's why we're all here. So code reviews in theory sound great and easy. Yeah, people are going to edit my work. It's great. But sometimes it can get really, really messy. Lots of changes from tons of different reviewers and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you just have to remember it's all about collaboration. It's about knowledge sharing, and it's about communicating your code to others so that they know what you're attempting to do and that you can get your code to like the best possible, what do you call it? I don't know, version that it can be. So just think of it as a communication tool. All right. So what is the code review cycle? And we all experienced this in this last week, but basically you open a pull request. So we all did that. And then do you all know why it's called a pull request? This really confused me in the beginning. So like when you have a repo, like from your perspective, you're pushing up the code. And originally I thought, oh, this should be a push request. Like this doesn't make it, why is it called a pull request? But this is talking about from the other side of the repo that is going to be pulling in your code. So that is why it's called a pull request. Please pull in my code. So once you open a pull request, you receive feedback. And then that'll be in the comments, or like people will go through, and I'll go through kind of GitHub and the different kind of features they have on GitHub that can help you kind of give feedback. So you'll receive feedback from all your different reviewers. You'll make changes. And then I think, what was it? Issue number 1 was a really good example of this last week, where you all submitted a PR, you had a lot of great conversation in the actual PR, changes were made, they were sent back to the team to get reviewed, and then that was great, got approved to the next spot, and then mentors kind of reviewed the PR, and then once everything was good to go, it got merged in. So what makes a code review a great code review? And I think we already got, like, I keep bringing up the examples of the code reviews this week, but I think the code reviews this week were great examples of what a good code review looks like. Your team took the time to actually like comb through and make suggestions on, or say things that you liked or didn't like about the code and kind of the approach that was taken. So what this slide is trying to convey, and in the real world, sometimes code reviews can be pretty harsh. But at Collab Lab, like we say, we're a sandbox, and we want to make this a safe space for you all and kind of remove that anxiety from code review. I know when I was working at like different companies for the first time, getting my seniors to look at my code, like I just wanted to hide under a table because I was like, oh my God, they're gonna rip me a new one because all my code sucks. Even like looking at code I wrote 6 months ago, I'm like, oh my God, why did I write it that way? My code sucks. But that's like that is a continual thing that you'll have to like live with. So Collab Lab is here so you can have a safe space. So in your code reviews, you can feel good about each other, lift up each other, and don't forget to point out the things that you love about the code as much as some suggestions that you would like to make. So I think so far I've seen great stuff from the code reviews we've done so far. So I feel like I don't need to belabor this point to this group, but yeah. So the next part of it is don't forget to run the code. So surprisingly or not surprisingly, sometimes for very small changes, I will forget to actually test out my code. I'll be like, I'll have like 10 different tickets I'm working on, hash out some code. Oh, oops, I forgot to test it. And then all the tests are failing. What? So make sure you test out the feature locally. Sometimes you're like, quick CSS fix. This will totally do what I intend it does. And then it doesn't. So just make sure that you test locally, and then also it's kind of a nice courteous thing for you to do it for when you're kind of reviewing the other team's branch as well. Just pull down the branch, kind of build it, get it up and running, and see if everything is good to go. Because sometimes like review of the code doesn't actually show you any like visual errors or things like that might come up. So how can I help others review my code? So meaningful PR description, context is like the number one here. So people forget what you're working on. Whether you have stand up every day and you're reminding people what you're working on, it's not their project, so they're going to forget. So context is king. So this whole slide is basically like, how do I create enough context so people can review my PR more effectively? So one, meaningful PR descriptions. And then two, this is kind of, not everybody does this, but writing meaningful commit messages is highly, highly recommended. If not for other people, for yourself, so you actually remember what that diff actually changes. And then you self-review your code. Sometimes in the beginning, what I like to do is, I don't know if you all have heard kind of like the rubber ducking method of debugging. Sometimes in the beginning, when I was writing PRs and I got feedback that, oh, I didn't really understand what this PR was for, I would rubber duck my PRs and try to explain to the rubber duck what my code was trying to do. And then listening to myself, I'd be like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. Maybe I should like write a little bit more context. So explain why, and then ask questions. So if you know something about your code, you're like, I feel this is a little bit hacky. You can point that out yourself and be like, hey, does anyone have any other better suggestions on how to handle this? And then the other really, really nice thing that we use at our company is making looms of a lot of our features. And so sometimes our like we have a mono repo. So building locally can take a really long time sometimes and really break the flow of your development work. So seeing someone else's loom of their feature while you're reviewing the code really helps set the context of what this feature actually does, because sometimes it can span like 20 different files across the mono repo and you're just like, what is this for? So that's how you can help others review your code. I could probably give some follow-up links on like writing meaningful commit messages. I read like a blog post earlier on in my boot camp that kind of framed how I approach writing commit messages. Okay, so this is exploring code in GitHub. So this is the part where I'll actually go in and give me a second. Okay, so I'll use this PR here. So you can see here that I don't know how you all reviewed the code, but basically the first thing I do when I get a PR is I'll take a look at the description and everything here. And yep. And then it's really great that you put the closes #1 issue. We can go over that later, but there's a before and an after screenshot, and then like the testing steps and things like that. That's all great and dandy. I have lots of context now on what you actually did. So I then go over to this files changed tab. And then as a reviewer personally, it might not be as like, important for these like smaller changes, because you can see here in the corner, we added 3 lines and took away 8. So this is pretty manageable for me as a reviewer. But typically what I would do is I would go and I walk through the commits. So I first go through this first commit, rendering list items, to see what they did. And yeah, they had, they're rendering this unordered list. There's this list item. Cool. That sounds great. So then I will go in and then I'll go into the next commit to see what they did here. And it'll be like, okay, they removed some of this like comments and things like that and cleaned it up a bit. Great. So then I can go back and toggle to show all changes. And what's great here is that you can either have a side-by-side view or you can have a unified view. It's up to your preference to see how the different changes in the diff goes. So the other cool thing about this is you can add comments directly in at the specific lines, or you can drag on multiple lines and add a comment. I think now you can actually add comments to code outside of the diff. It used to be you could only comment in the diff. And then if you want to get more context on the actual file that the diff is in, you can push this up button to see the rest of the file. So those are some really cool features that you can use. You can also, let's say we are in here and we want to suggest that they change it. Oh, I guess I can't suggest that change outside the diff. But let's say we want to suggest they rename something. So you can, there is usually a button where you can suggest changes and then you can write the code here in Markdown and then they can commit the changes directly in here. I don't see the button right now. So, but that is a feature that typically you can use. The other thing that I like to do is once we start getting into like many different files, and it gets a little bit cumbersome to just have one file after another, you can click this viewed button here and you can see how far along in the progress you've gone. So some PRs that I've seen that were like, we had to rename something across 50 files. It's helpful to just click viewed all the way down. And then you click this. And then if you have any changes you want to make or anything like that, oh, you know, it might be just because this PR is closed, so I can't do any of those things. But basically, like, you can kind of submit your review here. Usually when this PR is not merged and closed, you can click, like there's different options of you are requesting changes, you're just commenting, or you've approved the PR. So that's kind of all the different features that I typically use for a given in GitHub. The other nice feature is if a team gives you a suggestion using code, then you can also have a button that like commits all of the code that the other team suggested. So there's a lot of features here. So we can come back to the slides. I think, yeah, we went over all of those things. So that's basically kind of most of me sharing kind of what my experience has been for code reviews, kind of what you should view code review as, mostly just like a tool for communication and kind of like advocating for yourself and kind of get kind of help in different code areas that you're working on. And just having it as a past knowledge base. So I don't want to be a talking head the whole time. So if anybody else has any kind of comments, questions, or any thoughts from your past code reviews, how they made you feel, what worked, what didn't, would love to hear that.
I just want to say thank you for giving all these tips and showing those features. I personally, like this last week, I didn't really know what to put in the review. So I just clicked approve, and I can see obviously that's not very helpful for the other team. And so, yeah, this really definitely like prepares me to give more meaningful feedback and really engage more with that process. So this is super helpful.
I'll share a little of my experience with code reviews. I am one of the less experienced developers on my team. One of the things I think I suggest this to one of the teams is, even if you don't, the idea of like giving feedback doesn't necessarily mean you can always do that well, right? But I think in the act of asking questions to each other, that's like what's really important, right? Because it helps. And this is again like helping them, the other team, explain their thought process and sharing that with you. And that's what I was encouraged to do early on when I was reviewing a senior engineer's code. I'm like, what can I possibly tell this person that they don't already know? And that was what was suggested to me, is like ask questions. What don't you understand, or what's going on here that you want to know more about? That's giving the other group, the other team, the opportunity to explain their code to you and their thought process. So that's just as valuable as any feedback that you can provide.
I wish I could give a better example or more example. Unfortunately, I'm in a very different and unique experience in my job right now. So I don't do any code reviews. So, but I really like what Viet and Jen was talking about it. So, but don't be afraid. Like Jen said, this is a safe space. So ask questions, in the pull request. And if you don't know, I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and then this is a whole learning process. So just enjoy the process and have fun with it. And that's what I hope everyone gets out of it, at the end of this cohort.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jen, I did figure out the triple backticks, and it's the word suggestion, and then you can get in code.
Sweet.
If you don't have that button available to you.
Sweet. Yeah. So y'all can kind of try that out. I love that when people do that for like small typos and stuff, so they don't actually have to go back to the code, change them all, and like push it back up. So that's a nice little time saver. But yeah, I guess we're kind of running up on time. I want to make sure that we leave room for talking about issues going into next week. So I think what I'll do is I'll shelve kind of the whole rebase spiel, and then we can kind of revisit it at a different time, or we could revisit it during office hours or something like that. But I think it's still kind of, I'll share some links for you all. And if you want kind of a demo on how it's done, we can kind of arrange another time to do that. All righty. So get my checklist up to make sure I don't forget to talk about anything. All right, so let's take a look at our Kanban board. I really appreciate that you all actually moved the issue tickets into done. Our team really struggled with that. and I always forgot. So I highly appreciate that you guys are doing this. One thing I wanted to point out, so you can see here that issue number 1 has been checked and it's purple, means it's closed. And this one is still green. And so this is actually a very, very small thing, but you can go in here and you can see that this PR here, it says it closes issue number 2, but you actually don't see like the underline here. And in issue number 2, you see the branch was not linked to the actual issue. If we go to the other pull request, what you can see is that if you, wait, that's the same one. You can see that if you just use the word closes, it has this special underline, and you can hover over it and says this pull request closes issue 1. And so this is how you will manually, or this is how you will link in the PR the branch to the issue. The other one, when you just do the number and you don't have any like special stuff, it's not smart enough to know closes issue is the same as closes. So it won't automatically link that for you. So I just wanted to bring that up. So I'm going to go ahead and anyone on team 2 wants the satisfaction of clicking that close issue button, I'm not going to take it away from you. So just wanted to bring that up. So for this next week, we have Mariah and Weston and Tina and Arniqua on the different teams. So I'm going to be going over the issues. So shout out first dibs, whoever wants what issue while I'm talking. I'll leave the chat open too, so you can first dibs in there as well. All right, I haven't been, oh, I'm sorry if I didn't see any of your questions from earlier, but yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. All right, so issue number 3, as a user, I want to set up a new shopping list so I can start tracking purchased items. A shopping list is a set of items associated with a specific 3-word token. We need to allow users to start new lists so they can save the things that they need to buy. To start a new list, we will need to do a few things. So generate a new unique token, save the token to local storage, show the user the list view. Up to this point, the app has rendered the items in the list associated with the token My Test List. Before we can allow users to make new lists, we have to stop showing them the test list. So the acceptance criteria, we have a few utils that you have to add as a dependency to the project. And then making the placeholder list key, I think is that what we're calling it? Oh, placeholder list token, replace it with nothing at first so that there's no automatic list being shown. And then we have the functionality here. If a user doesn't already have a token, this is how they'll be able to generate a token by just hitting a button that creates a new list for them. And then if they already have a token, auto redirect list. So this looks like issues got a lot beefier this week than last week. So there's a bit more to here that you can tackle. And then if anyone specifically wants this issue, if not, I can go over the next issue and then we can call dibsies after we've gone through both. So as a user, I want to add a new item to my shopping list so I can start recording purchases. Ooh. Okay, users need to be able to add items to their shopping list. To do this, the add item view should present them with a form that allows them to enter 2 things, the name of the item and an estimate of when they think they'll need to buy the item again. So the README file will kind of help you understand some of the shopping list API that they've already wrote some helper functions for you in there. So some UI related tasks. So the home view displays a form that allows them to enter the name of the item and select how soon they anticipate needing it. So you have 3 choices. It's soon, kind of soon, and not soon. And these each have like a day value or day range corresponding to them. So the input that accepts the name of the item has a semantic label element associated with it. The user can submit this form with both the mouse and the enter key. When the user submits the form, they see a message indicating that the item was either was or was not saved to the database. So, and then a few data related tasks, the console log and the add item function in the API Firebase file is replaced with a function that adds new document to the Firestore database. the function will be imported from the Firebase Firestorm module. And then, so a lot of this week will be kind of interfacing with kind of external kind of libraries and things like that. So, and then the user soon, not soon, kind of soon choice is used to calculate next purchase date. So are there any questions kind of with these issues? I think the first issue kind of makes more visual sense. If you don't have a token, create a new token, redirect to the list. I think this one, it'll help if you look at the demo again of what the app you're actually building is, because understanding soon, kind of soon, and not soon can kind of become confusing and like, what the heck is this even for, to set up for the future. So I highly recommend whatever team ends up tackling this issue. Oh, I see Mariah commented Weston and I vote for number 3. All right. Let's see, and I'll assign you all there. Let's see, I think it's Seattle and there we go. All right. And then for number 4, we have what is your GitHub name, Arniqua?
I think she's A. Cole, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I just want to make sure like we read through these issues together, kind of giving the gist of what they're going to be doing. Does anyone have any clarification questions on like what's in scope, out of scope? Yeah, have super lots of fun. Oh, I think he's not here anymore. Future Weston I hope you had lots of fun. Yeah, I want to make sure we leave room for questions here or anything like that.
Yeah, I had a question. So for number 4, which is now ours, I was previewing this a little bit, and under the data related tasks where it says there's the console log will be replaced with a function that adds the new document. The Firestorm database, the function will be imported from the Firebase Firestorm module. So this is, I think, it's one of these like built-in Firebase functions. So we would go to the docs to find that.
Yeah, let's go ahead and explore the code ourselves as source. So if you go to source, actually, I think, actually, Viet or Yolanda, do you actually know this? Do they still use the Firebase like library, or is it already a helper function in the dependency? They've rearranged the project a little bit recently, so I just want to make sure that we give you the right answer.
And it's okay to follow up later. You know, we can like follow up with this conversation in Slack later. We don't have to address it right now. But that was the one question for me that came up as I was previewing was like kind of how to find that function. And my conclusion was that we have to just kind of go to the docs and figure out what is that terminology that's used in the land of Firebase.
Yes, great first conclusion. For any new library that you have to use, go to the docs.
But if there's something, yeah, but if there is like a helper function or something that was put in here by Collab Lab, if there is, I couldn't find it. So
okay, yeah, we will follow up with that question, and then we'll let you know when we find out.
Thank you.
Let's see, any other questions regarding issues or anything in general outside of anything? Cool. All right. So I think we actually made it on time this week. Woo! Thank you all for letting me talk for so long this week. As always, if you have any questions for any of us, drop them in the Slack, drop them in the PR, tag us wherever you need us. And then also, I wanted to lay it out there. If you have any random questions that do not have to do with your project or your PRs, also feel free to just post them in the Slack. We are happy to help, and we're here as a resource for also more than just your project. So feel free to utilize the resource. Thanks so much, everyone, this week for all the demos. And mentors, thank you so much for all of your input to kind of give more color and more experiences to life as a software engineer working on a team. If there are no other questions, we'll catch you all next week. All right, bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Woohoo, good job, everyone. Yay! All right, see you all next week.
Later.
Bye.